Okay, here we go. San Onofre interviews, 1997. Enjoy.
Okay. Do you need to test sound levels? Okay, testing sound levels. One, two, three. Testing sound levels. 1, 2, 3. Does that sound good, Carl? Okay, great. What's that? You want me to pass it back and forth? My close, there's too much noise. Okay. Yeah, perfect. We're down here at the beach at San Onofre at the classic longboard contest. And I'm talking here with Duke Boyd, who's the originator of the Hang 10 company. And I'd like to get some words from Duke about starting the company and what it was like originally when he first came down here to San Onofre.
Oh, wow, that's a long time ago. Well, but things were different then, classically. Uh, Basically, surfing was not organized in any sense of the word. In fact, it was more of a random, devil-may-care vagabond type of a sport at that time. And surfboards were probably the only industry there was. So when most of the surf trunks at that stage were being made in cotton shops from here to Hawaii. And a long story short, the M-knee trunk that was made out of makaha by a Filipino tailor was the one that set the stage for all of surfing. I and many other people at that stage in the game became involved in making clothing, especially for surfing.
Was that the inspiration then for the original Hang 10 truck? Was that Filipino tailor?
M. was his name, and I would say probably that's probably the father of the whole thing. If we really want to get down to it, he basically made what I call the Makaha trunk, which at that stage was worn by all the movie stars who came to Hawaii, and they'd all go out there. And the surfers basically got the tie fastening thing, and that ended up being their symbol of a surf trunk. And of course, now it's evolved to $1 billion industry.
And you brought that concept over and developed that.
I didn't actually, it's sort of like, as a metamorphosis of a sorts. I really didn't think of anything at that stage as having kind of a structure like you would have now. I was just making some surf trunks just to make a living to get through college. And the fact that it had all this history and credibility went with it for the sport wasn't really something I knew at the time. Sort of like it. If I would have known, I might have thought differently. But to be quite honest with you, it was a nice era, and it was sort of like before it became highly commercialized. And I don't say there's anything wrong with commercialization. A lot of people make a real nice living off of that. I'm just saying that this is happening in an era that was prior to all of that.
What year was that, roughly?
I'd say you're starting at something around 1958, 59, 60. That's the era. Probably M&E goes back in the early 40s someplace, but um, yeah, that's about the era.
Were you surfing San Onofre at that time?
I surfed in Hawaii when I first started. When I first was, I went to school in Hawaii as a boy, and I started surfing over there. It wasn't a lot of surfing because it was expensive, and I lived out in by Pearl Harbor.
And was that in the 40s as well?
I was in the 40s. 1946 is when that was. And then I basically went to school and all the rest of it. When I finally got out of the high school and college and service, I got back in the sport, and that was about 1959.
Oh, yeah.
And then basically, when I was going to college at Long Beach State, the university now, I started Hang 10 then. And with a lady named Doris Moore.
Oh, yes.
And she basically guided me through all the business traps, and probably one of the nicest people I've known through all my business history.
Did the business develop so quickly that surfing had to remain more of a hobby rather than a lifestyle with you?
Um, it always was a lifestyle. When at the moment I was able to do it full time, when I was in college, I just basically did it on my own all the time, and I never did actually go to work. I stayed in the surfing end of it, and basically just sort of like drifted from college into Hang 10, and taught myself as I went along. It took about 10 years for Hang 10 to go from 59 to 70. I think that's when it was in. I sold it. Um, and it was very successful. After about 6 years, it was doing quite well. But quite well, just different numbers. In those era, when I first started the Hang 10 trunk, the cost of the trunk was $3.75, which retailed at $7. And we were very high priced at the time.
That's right.
Yeah. How do you know that?
Because I couldn't afford your trunks. I had a paper route.
Yeah. Well, I know the feeling. I actually didn't get too many of them myself in the beginning. So,
do you see any opportunities now for young guys who want to make surfing more of a hobby and more as a lifestyle in terms of areas that they could get into and develop that would allow them the same opportunities that did you?
well, my idea after it has been that if you want to call your life successful, you determine that in the morning when you wake up and whether or not you're free to do what you want to do. Can you go surfing or do you have to go and work for somebody or something?
That's right.
And so my opinion is if you come to that as how you're going to go about plotting your life, keeping surfing first, then the rest of it is basically trying to make a deal on a continuous basis so you can continue to surf and not do any heavy lifting.
Yes, I know what that's like.
Heavy lifting is out. I mean, that doesn't work. You make a deal and you keep yourself on the beach. And to be quite honest with you, business is mental, it's not physical. And today's young people have an opportunity to do a worldwide business. They don't have to be restricted to a small thing. They can take the designs of Bali and move them into California, and the designs of California and move them into Africa. So the opportunity is sort of like a lot broader now because of I guess you call it the agreement about what surfing means. Around the world, around the shorelines around the world, surfers are all hanging out there, and you can basically sell to them and talk with them on a worldwide basis.
There's a common language, isn't there, regardless of what country you're in if you're a surfer?
Exactly. It is a common language. It's much like music. You can walk into any place that a surfer hangs out, and you can talk to him, and he'll understand what he's talking about. I call it the feel my rail syndrome.
Feel my rail.
Yeah, I used to go up to all the surf shops, and every one of them had me feel their rails.
Oh, boy.
And of course, one guy's rails are always better than the others. But it is a common language.
Well, Boyd, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to join your magazine. That's good.
We appreciate your insights.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye now.
We're down here on the beach at San Onofre, May 17th, 1977. Going to talk with Hobie Alter and Tom Morey. Generously allowed us some time, get their perspective on what it's been like for them and where they see things going today. So, Tom, could I just thank you first in terms of what you've done with the boogie board and making the ocean a little bit more available for people that have been always intimidated by the hard approach of using a surfboard. I appreciate your work on everyone's behalf.
Well, the reason for that is that I was flat broke and I didn't have anything to surf, and I lived about this far away from the ocean in Hawaii, and I had this real neat foam, this polyethylene foam in my garage, and I had been trying to build a thing that would be a great surfboard that would be used prone, that had a epoxy fiberglass bottom and a lofted contoured top thing that was 6 feet long with steps and several skags, and I built it a couple of times and it kept breaking in little waves that were 6 inches, 1 foot high. So I was out of money, and in my garage I had surplus foam, and for several months was in this condition with waves coming in, the foam, the garage, no surfboard. So one day I borrowed a electric knife from a friend, one of those carving knives that goes like that, and I timidly cut off a little piece of this foam. These planks were 9 feet by 2 feet, a couple inches thick. And then I remember at Clark Foam, the process that Hobie and Clark developed, where they blew the foam into paper and then the paper let the gases exit out. So I got a copy of the Honolulu Advertiser and laid it over this piece of foam got the iron heated up. I borrowed an iron from my wife and heated it and found I could shape that little board. So then I cut a piece of this 9-foot foam in half and made the front square so I could hold on to the front so it wouldn't break.
Oh, yeah.
And turned the back down so it wouldn't cut my stomach and left the bottom with a sharp edge and looked at the sides and just got to turn them down like a surfboard and thought they probably won't hold. From experience, I learned that you really need a skag if you've got those kind of edges.
Right.
So I thought, well, what about making them like a boat, turning them up? Maybe I could get a little vacuum on the inside so that when you go across the wave, you get a little vacuum drawing in there and it holds you in. So that's what I did is I cut that thing. And then that afternoon, it only took me about an hour. That afternoon, the waves were really crummy, but I paddled out and I wore swim fins because I had body surfed and knew I would need some swim fins.
Right.
And for the first time in my life surfing, I really could feel the wave, could feel the undulations of the wave, you know.
That's right.
So I caught my little first wave, came in, I tried to angle a little bit, I side slipped. It was just a junky wave, you know. And so I'm there on my knees in the sand, and I've got this thing, and I realize this is really something.
Beautiful.
This is really something.
What year was that?
So I took it out. This is 1971, around July 7th,
Uh-huh.
because one day Mike Stewart, who was, you know, was a well-acclaimed bodyboarder, was over at my house. He's a good friend. And this, when you iron this foam with this newspaper, then the ink transferred to the paper. You pulled off the paper, and the ink is stuck there. So he asked me the same thing. When do we do this? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, maybe it's on the newspaper date.
Oh, my gosh.
So he got a mirror and a magnifying glass because the dates, it's all written backwards.
Uh-huh.
And he went around there for about a half hour, and then he says, I got it. And he found it was the July 5th, 1971 newspaper. So I think it was a couple of days later.
Very nice.
So then after surfing that, the first day, I got it a few days later, the surf came up, and I was able to go paddle out at this place called Banyan Trees on the big island that is lots of urchins and shallow rocks, but it's a good reef.
Right.
The tide was dropping. Everybody was leaving. And I paddled out because I don't need any depth. Just a couple of inches and you can surf. So I was able to surf there and traverse across the wave. And at that point, I knew we really had something.
Very nice. Very nice. Do you still have that prototype somewhere?
I have it in the garage.
Great.
It's worth $10 million.
Sure that it is.
And I'm looking for a buyer.
I don't know if there's any
That's what I'm
museums with
talking
that
about.
much money. You can tell the world now.
The surf
It's for
museum,
sale.
I might discount.
It's for sale. 1971. So when did you two make an acquaintance? Is that in the process of a commercial enterprise?
No, we were
Sharon Orr.
yeah. Sharon Ryder, my wife.
Sharon Orr.
Oh, was that
Before your wife.
for her? Okay, you were going with Sharon
I was going with Sharon Orr, then you were going with Sharon Orr.
Orr. That's right.
I
Okay.
was going with Sharon Reimers. Stopped, and one day you said, I think she's kind of cute.
That's right. So I married her.
Very gentlemanly. Very gentlemanly about it.
So it was actually a woman then that brought you two together in a way.
So we surfed in Laguna there and that, and so we've been friends anyway. Tom was a drummer there in high school, and it was a small town, and everyone knew each other. There's just a smaller group of us that were surfing,
Yeah.
and in fact, I actually as bellyboard, I was going to call it bellyboard. Used to bellyboard surf a lot there in Laguna before we got into surfing. And I tried to. People would ask for bellyboards and that, but it was too expensive to build one. You couldn't. Darn near as much work as a surfboard to go if you caught in the way of fiberglass and foam and that. So we never did do it because there wasn't any way in there we could really get in and be competitive, and that's we came up with a way to come in not only make a better product, a software, but also where we had a price that was within reason too, because they tried to build one like a surfboard and you got a lot of cost in it.
Do I understand correctly that you went to high school in Laguna Beach together?
I went to high school in Laguna Beach, and he was a few years older and lived down there. And he was the man down there. He was the man at the south end of California,
Right.
because he was a great surfer, and he was the pioneer manufacturer, the pioneer board builder. There was two pioneers really that were actually turning this backyard thing into a production. There was Belzy up north doing it, Belzy's system. Yeah. And then there was Hobie, who was really had skills that were dawning on him that enabled him to bring people together and build equipment and build business. So I'm just sort of a grim hanging out, watching what he's doing, trying to figure it out.
Oh yeah.
And he's the surfer. He's the main surfer, and he's the guru. He's the kahuna.
Hallelujah.
Very
Oh.
nice.
Hobie, when did you start surfing down here in San Onofre? It was a little bit of a trip for you. Was it something you did regularly or just on occasion?
No, actually, we were a few friends were riding in Laguna there with paddle boards, no fins, and in fact, our theory was then as soon as the wave broke, jump because you're not going to stay there anyway very long.
What year was that?
Oh, this had been 47, 8, and 9, and into there, and in fact, I forget who it was. Someone said there's a place called San Onofre where they surf, and so we came down. Maybe Herb Nolan or Dick Nolan, and we took the paddleboards and came down here. Well, with this flat wave compared to Brook Street or that. This was an easy one. We actually could ride. In fact, I think it was a high tide day too, so that really made it an easy day that we could actually ride a board, stand up on it. When the wave broke over, it wasn't clear to the bottom and thrashing. You had a shelf on it. We were amazed to ride in the soup, and we didn't have surfing. We weren't seeing people surf.
Well, these were paddle boards.
These
correct?
are paddle boards, yeah. And so that was our first time in San Onofre, and then after that we realized it was there, but we really didn't do anything until we got into actually having a real surfboard, which Walter Hoffman showed me how to make one. The first guy I saw come by that could really surf and had a real board, and
it was a balsa board.
Balsa board, yes. And see, that was right at the time that all of the main surfer, older surfer guys were all riding on redwoods and they were heavy, and you were really
that was the innovation.
Limited what you do. So the balsa board, which has been going for a little while, Simmons and Quigg and Killen, I'm not sure who's responsible there for what, but I got one right away, and so all of us I started, you couldn't find one anywhere, so it's automatic in business. Don't want a board, I'd make it for them. There, and Belgium's doing similar things up north, and no one is still in business. They're in their garages or that building boards.
Are we into the 50s now?
This would have been 50, and it also allowed all of us younger surfers to become the better surfers, because we came in with equipment that was so far in advance that we just leapfrogged right over history. The guys behind you, there wasn't anything, excluding someone who got a balsa board before you did. That was the only guys you had to beat out to a certain extent. So it did allow us to jump right into surfing and do well with it. We had the right product. Good timing. The timing couldn't have been better.
When did it cross your mind that you could actually do some business and maybe keep surfing by selling surfboards?
Well, I was going to junior college and building them in my garage at the same time, and trying to figure out what I was going to do. I wasn't a real shark in school, and I think my dad suggested, said, you got so many people are finding you in your garage to buy a surfboard from you, have you make a surfboard for them. That if you got out on the highway or somewhere where people could see you, you might do pretty good. And this is kind of a neat deal, because I liked the idea, but I wasn't sure whether there really was a business there at that time. Things were small, and we looked for shops in Laguna. Couldn't find anything; it was too expensive. So we went to Dana Point. I had some money I had saved from both building boards, smudging, my dad's orange groves, and some that my grandfather had given me. So we built a shop in Dana Point, and I was saying the good part about this is my dad's the one that suggested it, so therefore I go, if it don't work, I can blame him. It's not like I went out and took all my money and blew it. But and he was the surfer and he it, but he did see it. They'll find you in the garage. You got to be good. And it was right. We got on the Coast Highway Dana Point, which was probably the luckiest thing, because we just sat out there by ourselves. There wasn't anything there. I mean, you drove by Dana Point, you had to see us.
Just past the cow.
And I don't know anything about the cow.
It's just past the cow. I mean, you just drive along, there'd be a cow, and it was a shop.
Oh yeah, you tell. Right.
So that was a lucky thing.
That was 1950.
That was 54, actually February 54 that it opened the shop, and I had quite a few friends that we like you. You're gonna make 200 boards for everybody on the coast. Then what do you do after that? And it was a little scary. I didn't know how many people are out there, but as it was, being out there where they could find you, there was a lot of other people looking for surfboards too, and didn't know where to go to get one. And so, yeah, we were busy. I was just behind from then on.
So there wasn't really a point where it just took off. I mean, it just took off right from the beginning, and you stayed busy until
it was February. I was busy. I seem like I always had at least a 6-week backlog or longer. Summer it got worse, and I had this thing. Okay, so Hobie surfboard, so therefore I had to shape it. And so that limits down. A balsa wood is a lot more work. So that really limited how many you could make. And I did shape every balsa board that we ever produced. I think it's two. Gator shaped one and Phil shaped one. I had Phil used to sand them and have to do the flat stuff and that. And that was until we got into foam. Then foam, we really had some capabilities, and the business was growing, and the Gidget era came along, and it was. I started hiring shapers, teach other guys to shape.
Did you always sign your shapes in one particular place?
No, I didn't sign anything. We had a rubber stamp. I stamped my name. I said Hobie. That was it.
Oh, yeah.
No, it was. I don't think any of it. In our competition, we were all the same thing. We were all surfers, and we were happy to make a living at the beach and be able to stay there and make us enough to get along. I don't think anyone was ever thinking of getting rich on this thing. They didn't anyway. Well, I just think of surviving for a long time.
It's been a little bit more than that, hasn't it?
Well, it has actually. We did better in the boat business than the surfboard business.
Could you talk a little bit about that and maybe your collaboration with Phil Edwards?
On which is that?
What happened with the catamarans?
Oh well, Bill got me into sail. I took my first sailboat rides with him, and he would make a little catamaran for Sandy Banks. Who worked for me, and they were using it at San Onofre. And I had this Bee Cat. It was a nice boat, but 600 pounds. Took 6 guys to drag it up and down the beach, and was good to sail with too. And so we all talked about, wouldn't it be neat to have a little boat we could use right through the circle? Nothing really came about on that. The one that Sandy had was a little 11-footer, go over in every direction. It was kind of fun. We could run it in and out, and it was practical. It wasn't much of a performance product, and that was kind of it. And the guy came by, and he was interested in buying the surfboard business. And so talking to him, and he had a guy with him who his mother made him bring with him to make sure that he didn't go out and spend all his money in the wrong place. And this guy figured out that he would be spending all his money in the wrong place if he bought surfboard business, and it wasn't a very good deal. But he did ask me, he said, what else could you do? And I said, well, if I had time to run the business here, I said, I think there's a business for a small catamaran. I don't know what it is. I've never built one, but I think with a little time, that's what I would do. I would take a shot at that. So a few weeks later, he came back and he says, friend's not going to buy a surfboard shop. I said, I know it. He says, what do you think if we both put some money together and I'll run the business side and you can do the design and that and try to build this small catamaran you're talking about. We had put $5,000 in the bank and took a Quonset hut that I kept my motorcycles in and
the same Quonset that you developed the foam in?
No, that was down in Laguna Canyon that we did. That was behind Kenny's in San Juan Capistrano Beach, and we kind of took some air from the surfboard shop from the compressors there. So we didn't put much into it. And, started making some prototypes. Like we bought 2 Calcats that Joe Quigg had made, and they were nice, a pretty boat. And I tried them, and I thought, I think we need some improvement on that. In fact, that was been acceptable enough. I think I might have stayed with it, but I thought there was a little room to improve. So, anyway, we made some prototypes, tried them, learned a little more, and I knew nothing about sailing. We're just learning all as we're making. Sometimes there's a good deal there because you're not all screwed up with the history and how things should be in sailing. You can just make it the way you want to. And the boat evolved with 3 prototypes. I had one I can move the mast fore and aft and tweak the hulls in and out. Finally you move everything around. Okay, the mast goes here and that. So we knew that anyway. So we're screwing around with that.
Yeah.
Well, we're fooling around that asymmetric hull too, which is really a Woody Brown.
An asymmetrical hull.
Yeah, that's a Woody Brown design for the Beach Cats in Waikiki. As it was the design of those boats was not what we used as our design, but it was an asymmetric hull. It just took a different version because he had 40-foot boats and we were building a 14-foot boat. And people always said, you can't take a boat and just blow it up and it'll work, and it won't. And I'm going to change over just a little bit here. I took the 14 when I wanted to do the 16. I just blew it up. I drew it out and blew it up. It was the biggest turkey in the world. Too much buoyancy. I couldn't get any hull into the water to bite. The 16, in proportion to the 14, was a much finer hull. But the 14 was such a small boat that you're sinking it anyway, so you are getting enough hull in there to drive against. So, but anyway, that's the things we kind of fiddled around with, and they were more trial and error deals than being a scientific sailor. In that, we got a sailmaker to build us a good sail for it, and we kind of figured out how much power the sail could handle. Those are things. Well, how much do you weigh? Well, we want to be able to have about a 160, 70-pound boat person be able to handle. So that already determines what you can be able to ride it, how much sail the boat should have.
So the end result is that you've got the largest selling production boat in the world now in the Hobie 16. Is that true?
I believe it is. I know that's true. I think it has been the #1 seller in the world every single year, including probably this year since 1971.
Yeah, that's
mainly we got several manufacturers, but I don't know of another boat that even comes close to fitting into that groove. Yeah, so
both of you gentlemen have really been instrumental.
That boogie board.
That's right.
Out there, and no one's come out with anything that challenges anyone who's making any, including us, our copies of Tom's board. I mean, same construction, same getting deal.
Well, you're getting lucky. You team up with guys. Now, I was cutting those boogie boards out with a saber saw, and I was gluing them on with contact cement, and I was doing it myself because I couldn't trust anybody else to do the quality, all that stuff. And I've got a few guys that work pretty good. And one day, a guy showed me that you could use hot air and stick that foam together. He had a heat gun and he heated up some foam, and it was this incredible bond, and my jaw dropped. So another thing that happened is that I teamed up with a real neat guy that was an old guy at the time, 53. I was 37. And I was about 40. He was a sea captain, ex-alcoholic, guy named Jim Favor. And this guy loved knives. He had been in construction in Puerto Rico and somehow got into knives, and he just loved sharpening knives. And he says, we have all this stuff today, but we skip ahead so fast we don't make full use of what there is. He says, you see this knife? He says, look what you can do with it. Look how sharp it is. Look what happens if you get it even sharper. And he just was into that because it's a symbol of optimizing. This is the most optimistic person I'd ever met, because as soon as he saw the boogie board, he got into optimizing on what I was dreaming of. He would get behind that and really dream it up. So anyhow, I invited him over one day because he was a guy that people said, you ought to meet this guy, Jim Favor. You're made to work together. And if you're going to Costa Rica, he'll be at such and such a place. You ought to see him. We were going to Costa Rica. Well, we went there. We never saw him. We came back. We moved to Carlsbad. Somebody said, you ought to meet this guy, Jim Favor. He just lives the next block over. So we went over and met him and he came out to the shop, and he had this knife with him because he always had a knife with him. And when you went to his house, he was always sharpening a knife. So he looked at the foam, and he took the knife, and he just cut a little bit of that foam. And again, my jaw dropped.
Like butter.
Butter, man. That cuts like butter. And so something inside of me, I've never had any tooling knowledge except just hanging around your shop a little bit, looking around. Never had any training in it, but things inside me, like you hear about people that have revelations. Well, I get revelations and things just go. So ideas click together to take my kitchen table and make an arm that would come down with some nails in it and hold the board. The arm comes down, and the thing would go around, and we put the knife in there somehow. And Favor, who was a carpenter, could build it. So all I had to do was say, this is what I have in mind. You think you can build that? And he was right on it. So we built this thing with a knife that went around this way, and we tried to make one knife go all the way around. But in the meantime, we learned that if the knife is slanted back a little bit, it cuts better. But if it's slanted back, it cuts this side crooked from this side, different from this side. Anyhow, we ended up with two knives that cut these boards out. And then we built a thing with some lights and a conveyor, and we put these skins in the foam in so the light would shine heat in, and we could heat weld these skins on and heat weld with a heat gun, and then develop dipping the glove in water. I invented these little things you come up with to solve your problem.
Before from anyone,
It's a rough edge. How could I melt that rough edge down? Well, I don't know. Maybe I could heat it and then get something that was slippery. I'll put some water on. So you put your glove in water and go along. Anyhow, there's been I don't know how many million boogie boards made by everybody, by every manufacturer in all the different countries. There's 124 bodyboard makers in Japan.
My goodness.
They all use knives. They all use a wet tool. They all use a heat welder.
Hey, they were
One of the
looking right
biggest
over
thrills of my life, is I'm someplace and I see a picture of some black guy in Africa, in South Africa, that's making a boogie board. And he's standing there with an iron, because we used to shake them with a hot iron, because you melt the foam. The slower you go, the easier it is to shake. And this guy has got the same posture and doing the same thing that I had been doing, 15,000 miles away 10 years earlier.
Right.
And those are thrilling little moments that you get.
Very gratifying.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, could I thank you both for your time today and also for your contributions to our aqueous world and for making it available to many more people than it would have been without your efforts.
Thank you. That was kind of fun.
What tracks did we have?
Can you move in a little bit tighter again? Okay, we've got to do a sound test here. How does that sound? Good?
1, 2, 3.
Okay, we're down here on the beach at San Onofre, May 17th, 1977, with Alan Seymour, the organizer of the event. Alan, could you give us a few words on your association with San Onofre and how it began for you and what's happening today?
Sure. It's wonderful to be here on the beach at San Onofre. We've had a long-standing club here, the San Onofre Surf Club. Happened just after the Rancho Santa Margarita was founded, or was sold to the Marine Corps, and it was a private club for years. And then, as it became open to the public, it became even more important for people to continue the heritage of San Onofre.
When about was that, Alan?
It was just right at World War II, I believe. Let me, Ron Sizemore. When was the San Onofre Surf Club actually founded?
1952.
52. Okay.
Thank you, Bob Kiefer.
Yeah. So 1952, the San Onofre Surf Club was founded, and then President Nixon, one of the great moves he made for a non-surfer was he dedicated the whole front of Camp Pendleton for a state beach, most of it, and it allowed the public access. And from that day on, when the club became public, we as members of the San Onofre Surf Club felt it was important to teach the people that came here, or to carry on the tradition of the aloha spirit of everybody sharing together at the beach, and we really appreciate what we have, and we're trying our best to keep it. And one of the things was the idea for having the Hobie San Onofre Classic was many of my friends started to collect surfboards, vintage longboards, and they had them on the wall, and they're laying on the couch slugging down the beers. And so we thought, why not get them off the couch, get the boards off the wall, and get back in the water. So that was the initial idea to have this contest.
Beautiful. So it's a way of sharing some of the tradition and some of the knowledge of the people that have been with it, with others that may not be quite so aware.
Exactly. And today, when you have Hobie is here, and he now lives up in Idaho, and Bing Copeland, he lives in Idaho as well, and you have Rabbit Kikaik, who's 76 years old, coming over here from Hawaii. It's nice when people can talk to him and ask him about, why did you do a certain thing 40 years ago that revolutionized surfing? And you can ask the guy who did it, and he can tell you. That's kind of special.
When did you become involved with San Onofre, and how? Were you a young boy then?
Yeah, as a lifeguard in San Clemente, most of the lifeguards were members of the San Onofre Surf Club, and we used to come down here in the evenings and barbecue, and that was in the early 60s. And so I've always been coming here ever since junior high school. My first time I ever came here was with my girlfriend Candy Calhoun in 1958, and I'll never forget that experience.
Candy Calhoun was pivotal in women's surfing at that time, wasn't she?
Exactly. Yeah, and I go surfing with her, and she was a way better surfer than I was.
Who were some of the people that you remember seeing out in the water when you were a boy?
Probably the hottest was Ron Sizemore from Laguna, and he could do it all. If you decided to do something on the beach, he could beat you, whether it was sand castle building or skimboarding or riding 15-foot waves. He was the best.
Where did he go on to?
He won the Huntington contest in '61.
Ron's right there.
Heels through the pier. It's a legendary move, which of course, that's
Bye,
his
Ron.
move. Munoz has the Quasimodo. Everybody remembers. I remember like yesterday on 10-foot waves hanging heels through the pier.
My gosh.
Yeah, it was something to see.
Was Phil Edwards around at that time?
Yeah, Phil actually was. Phil was so good. The first time I saw him, I couldn't believe what he was doing. I thought he was absolutely had no clue because he took off at 10-foot cottons and went right. And I went, what an idiot. Well, he turned so late beyond anything I thought could be done and rode so deep. He redefined my limits of what I could believe possible.
Did Corky Carroll make an appearance at some point?
Yeah, Corky and I were roommates right out of high school. And one thing about Corky is he technically knows exactly what he's doing. And if you notice any of the old footage of Corky, like a tennis pro, he knows how to be in the right place at the right time. And he was a tremendous contest surfer.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
I think we'll wrap that up
All right,
on that
thanks.
note then, Alan.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Good.
What do you think? If I was the government. That's right. You're right. How time today? I touched mine. At least $20. Good. You're gonna have to go to San Onofre. There's yeah. He's riding a board he's never ridden before. What? What? I think he's out now. Oh, you know what?
much.